we're going to get into this social media influencer story, and I'll just obviously read out this headline of Brooke Bakehouse has been accused of plagiarizing by RecipeTin Eats founder. Got to get all the hashtags and handles correct. And of course, the question is can you own a recipe? It's copyrighted and all that. Look, there's a whole can of worms here that I'll probably get into a bit later with you, but the thing that I wanted to start with is I saw this appear on Breakfast News while I was away last week, and I could not believe that they were spending. Well, first it made it to the news. That was the first thing, and then they proceeded to spend 10 to 15 minutes on this story. It wasn't just here's the story. There was, a back and forth. There was an interview. There was an analysis and a discussion. And my reaction was like, what the hell is going on here? How is this even a story? Basically. Now, that might be my anti-social media bias coming out there because, as I may have indicated on past episodes, I'm not usually a fan. I know it's irony. We've got our podcast and we use YouTube. I've got a Facebook account I still post to for to get some links out and stuff, but ultimately I don't really use it, and for good reason, which I think is for for things like this, because there's money involved, obviously, and that's why it gets elevated to this level of discourse, for lack of a better term. But this story essentially has everything in it as to why I would never want to use social media ever again.
Well, yeah, I guess you could take a step back. I mean, firstly, the best thing about this is two bakers going biffo. So what's not to love? Two bakers with two teams, two separate tribes on social media. So we're polarized right from the start. Pick a side and pile on. It could be any topic at all. It just happens to be baking. I think what's interesting about this, is that the real dispute is over printed hard copy books, and not so much, although the allegation is of plagiarism, but I think it's encroachment on someone else's turf is really what it is. So, someone's raised something about someone else and they've kind of, their supporters have fought back, and it's an all-in brawl. What's not to love?
Oh, well, just to tease that out a little bit, like, again, it's only something that happens in this modern online level of discourse, for lack of a better term. Like on the one side, you've got Brooke Bellamy being, dropped as, whether she's sponsoring or ambassadoring something or whatever. There, people are dropping her like anything. Then on the other side, the person behind the other account. See, I'm already forgetting handles already. They're getting trolled by people probably from the other side, which is again what you were saying before about the pile-on, and it's like it's just playing to the worst instincts of everything, and arguably over, this is probably a more frivolous thing, eating, cookbooks, recipes and whatever. What happens if it's something a bit more serious? And I'm not saying that, there's probably something like that happening right now somewhere else in a more, with something more serious potentially.
Well, that's right. And I'll point out that both of us are really commentating on what we're observing rather than the allegations per se. But on that alone, in all this reporting we've seen, I'm still yet to see a concrete allegation, and I'm still yet to see actually a concrete defence. There's an inference that there's plagiarism, and there's an inference that it wasn't plagiarised, but nobody's actually proven anything, because as far as I can tell, there doesn't seem to be a lot of very clear basis for this, because of the confusion around what constitutes copyright and intellectual property in a recipe, and the fact that you can make the argument that basically you have to copy parts of recipes if you're making a particular kind of base or a particular kind of custard. If you don't use ingredients in those quantities, well, then they're just not going to work. So I'm no expert in this field, and I wouldn't claim to know who was right or wrong, but you could be extremely cynical if you wanted and just say, well, the publicity from this will benefit both of them in the end.
Well, just to pick up on that point, because that's exactly where I was going to go to next. Not that I'm suggesting that this is actually what's happening, but there's a part of me that's cynical and suggests that is this a put up job, to drive clicks to both channels or to subsidiary channels? Like, it's entirely possible in this world that we're living in.
And even if it didn't start off that way, if the original allegation wasn't motivated by that, there are plenty of people around who know that they can profit if they turn it into this. So you and I are highly cynical about social media and the activities that occur in that sort of field. And I think that probably that's what we're pointing to more broadly, that's the sort of thing that creates big stoushes out of something that maybe isn't quite so bad.
And the last thing I wanted to touch on was just the traditional media and the fact that they, launched into this story as well. Maybe it was newsworthy, maybe it wasn't newsworthy, or maybe they're just trying to, join in because this is the way you stay relevant. You have to stay on top of these stories because social media is a much stronger force in the news world these days, and they don't have any choice but to pick these things up.
Well, if I was in the newsroom and I saw the size of both of these protagonists' followings, and I realised they were greater than what I've got in my newsroom, or they could contribute a significant proportion to my following, I'd definitely be out to try and attract them.
Yeah, so there you go, everyone. At the end of the day, it's all about the clicks, and it's all about the subscribers, and it's all about the views.
It feeds on itself.
Yes, absolutely.
Let them bake and let them eat cake.